Hello, beautiful souls. I am really stoked because I'm going to do a really basic series on what the Akashic Hall of Records is, where it is, all of that sort of stuff. I got a really great question on one of my last YouTube videos, and I really want to break down what the Akashic Hall of Records is for you, where it is, how it appears, all of that good stuff. So in this video, we're going to be talking about what it looks like. If you want to go into more depth about things like life contracts and other forms of healing, I do have a monthly membership, so I will link that down below where I go much more in depth into these concepts just because, algorithms. So if you're interested in that, I will link it down below. I'd love to see you there, but no pressure. I'm going to be doing a lot of free content here on YouTube as well. So I love you so much. I'm so happy you're here. What does the Akashic Hall of Records look like? So the Akashic Hall of Records is located in the spirit world, and you might think of that in terms of dimensions, realms, levels, places. It's very interchangeable. From my understanding, it's an 8th dimensional realm. And they have showed it to me in what it looks like in the 8th dimension once. But it was very confusing. It was just a bunch of swirling energy and concepts, and time doesn't exist there. And so it was really intense for a mere mortal like myself to go and see that. So they tend to kind of put a filter on it, and it helps us contextualize it. But because it's so much swirling energy and time doesn't really exist, and time is a concept there, and all of this beautiful, amazing stuff, the Akashic Hall does tend to look like a library for most people, or a temple. Or it might look like a temple on the outside, and when you go inside, it looks like a library. So that's kind of the classic form. Some people reach it through astral projection. Some people reach it in the dream state. Some people reach it meditating. I tend to reach it by putting myself into a trance, and then part of my consciousness stays in my body and the other part of my consciousness goes into the spirit world. And from going to the Akashic Hall so many times in the spirit world, I've started to kind of understand a little bit about how it works. And now that I do past life readings for people and do Akashic Records work for others, it's so beautiful because every single time I go there for a new person, it looks different. It's so creative. So I've seen it as like a really modern, beautiful architecture type building. I have seen it as an old stone temple. I've seen it as a temple carved into the cliffs of some beautiful landscape. I've seen it with a moat around it. I've seen it covered in certain flowers. And sometimes the Akashic Hall will appear in a way that gives my client a hint, which is really cool. So it'll give my client a hint or a message through the way that it appears. So one of my clients had a daughter with a very specific name, and the flower that surrounded the Akashic Hall was her daughter's name flower. I've seen it where people have been thinking about making a career change and they never told me when they booked with me, but the Akashic Hall made it look like a collage that would be on Instagram or something, and this person's thinking of getting into social media, that sort of a thing. So sometimes it's just an aesthetics choice, and sometimes they leave really cool hints. Then when I get inside, it tends to be mostly dark, but if my client is a very clairvoyant person, we all have different psychic senses to different abilities. So if my client's a very psychically visual person, clairvoyant, they will sometimes light the thing up. It'll have a whole room. It'll be very intricate. I'll know what the tile on the floor looks like. But if my client's a little bit more claircognizant or clairaudient, they'll come to me in a different way. It'll be mostly dark, and I might talk to the consciousness of the Akashic Hall itself. I might talk to a worker. They might pull a lifetime for me to dive into and heal or look at and bring knowledge and information back. Sometimes they'll pull up life contracts, which is kind of the blueprint that we put in place before we incarnate here, full of challenges and blessings and kind of those moments that feel like destiny. If you want to know more about that, I will link a video down below where I talk more about life contracts and what their purpose is. It's very interesting stuff, really helps with manifesting. And sometimes I'll be shown their spiritual form and we will do coding. Sometimes I'll get to go to the basement of the Akashic Hall, which is almost like where they hide certain things away for what feels like a long time. So it might be like an activation for my client where their higher self has put a piece of their knowledge or power or something in kind of like a time capsule. And then when I go do the reading, they're like, it's time. And we get to go look at whatever it is. yeah, it's a really creative, cool space. But because it's eighth dimensional, time doesn't exist the same way there. Because it's eighth dimensional, you can't really like die there. So the workers kind of choose to work there for a certain, I would say, amount of time, but really it's a certain experiential time because, once again, time doesn't really exist. And it's a really cool place. It's essentially the database of the universe. So everything that ever happens on planet and off planet tends to be recorded there. It's also where our life contracts kind of get tethered, or kind of our higher self wants to tether part of our consciousness down into where we are in our little meat suits in the third dimension, because we need kind of a place to anchor to so we don't just float back to source whenever. It's a really beautifully designed system, and I'll get into it in another video about why the Akashic Records came to be and who designed it and why that is even a thing. But there is kind of an overarching consciousness that I guess knows everything on one level, right? And I talk to it a lot, and it's very kind and loving, and it's a very loving dimension. Anything eighth dimension and higher tends to be a love vibration. So if you're tuning into your guides and you're wondering if you're talking to the right person or someone who's going to lead you astray, just really set a deep intention for eighth dimension and higher. And so the Akashic Records is of that love vibration, eighth dimension and higher. It's a really interesting relationship too, because anything in spirituality contradicts itself. So I have also met the consciousness of essentially like the concept of the void, and it's, I guess you would call friends with the Akashic Records. They divinely love each other, and the void deeply loves the Akashic Records, and the Akashic Records deeply loves the void, and together they kind of create this really beautiful universal balance, right? Of some people seek enlightenment through clearing their mind and their consciousness and not thinking about anything and just being and existing. And that's kind of that divine void. You can't really have like a full void. There's always going to be something in it, consciousness wise. But it's like this dark, expansive love field, right? Where you don't have to think about anything or worry about anything. It's more about being and existing. And then the Akashic Hall of Records is also about existing, but it's about the details. It's about, what did I do to this person in this lifetime? And what did they do to me? And how is that holding me back? And how is that affecting my life this time? And am I feeling guilty? Do I need to forgive myself? Do I need to forgive others? How does that all interlink? And the more past life work I do for people and for myself, the more I realize how deeply ingrained it is in our subconscious when we go through something like this. So the Akashic Hall of Records is really cool. It'll look kind of however it makes sense to you. I always say that spirit talks to us in a way that makes sense to us. So if you hear one person being like, I meditated, went to the Akashic Hall, and it looked like a castle, and then you set the intention to go to the Akashic Hall and it looks nothing like that. Maybe it looks like a beautiful desert with like a beautiful modern building. As long as you feel that Akashic Hall energy and you go in and you interact and you ask the questions and you go to see your past lives and things like that, and it resonates, you're probably in the same place. It's just because it's an eighth dimensional space, it's way too much for us to really comprehend how to interact with that energy if it's not with that filter. And so they get creative with that filter. They want that filter to make sense to us. Spirit understands us, and the Akashic Hall of Records understands us so deeply because it has such a deep understanding of time and space and our personalities and what we're thinking at all times and our feelings, that when I get an intention from my client and we're going to go work on a specific issue, they'll know when I'm coming. They'll be prepared for me when I get there. They have all the lifetimes or contract pieces or coding that they want me to do all laid out for me because they know when I'm coming. And then they also never give me more than my client can handle, which is beautiful. So if you like this series and you want to know more about the Akashic Hall of Records, I'd love it if you left me a comment and leave me any question you have. It's going to make it easier for me to make better content, better videos, instead of me guessing at what people want to know. Sometimes it's a bit of, a blind spot when you go somewhere so often, and I don't really always know what people are curious about or what people know. So let me know what you think. Let me know what questions you have. Know how loved you are. Like, the Akashic Records exist because Source loves you. And it's a system for us to experience karma and dharma and understand who we are by seeing what we're not while we're here on earth. And it's beautifully designed, and we're a huge part of the design process for our lives, which sounds scary at first, but it's very empowering when you really wholeheartedly accept that concept. It makes it less scary that no one's doing anything to you and there's a piece of you choosing a lot of things. So just know how loved you are. Just know that spirit talks to you in a way that makes sense to you. And let me know what Akashic Records video you'd like me to make next. I love you so much. Have an awesome day. If you like these videos, make sure you also click the bell and subscribe because you don't want to miss when I upload one. So much love. Bye, friends.